Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm new, so this
Tell me your
Lizzie.
name. Lizzie, yes.
Yes, this might be a naive question, but I'm going to ask. I'm struggling with the idea when we say I am and being is nothing. I picture it like a clear jelly. It's just there. And then when we describe the nature of being and I am as loving, compassion, peaceful, I'm like, but it's nothing. So to me, that means it has to know upset. It has to know conflict.
All right. Okay. You're absolutely right, Lizzie. Can I upgrade your analogy from being like jelly to like empty space? It makes it easier for me to respond to your question. So take the analogy of empty space, which relative to physical objects is nothing, similar to the sort of nothing that being or consciousness is. In being or consciousness, there's no objective content. So your question, why then is it legitimate? Why do you speak of being as being peaceful, compassionate, or loving? Take the word compassion out. I don't refer to it as compassionate. I'll come to that in a minute. But I do refer to it as inherently peaceful and inherently loving. You're absolutely right. Strictly speaking, I shouldn't. I shouldn't assign any qualities to it. Why do I? Because I'm not trying to be accurate. I'm trying to be evocative. I'm trying to evoke in you the experience of being, the knowing of being. And with reference to the content of experience, or more specifically, with reference to the agitation of your thoughts, that in being there is an absence of that agitation. Now, what's the common word for the absence of agitation?
Peace.
It's peace. So if we were to describe being with reference to the agitation of our thoughts, it is legitimate provisionally to say its nature of peace. The being or consciousness does not share the sorrow that characterizes our emotions, shame, guilt, fear, and so on. What is the common name for the absence of sorrow? Happiness. So for that reason, I sometimes say happiness is the nature of being. From the point of view of the finite mind, experience seems to be divided into self and other, subject and object. So there is a division between the subject and object. There is separation from the point of view of the finite mind. But in being, in empty space, there are no divisions. And what's the common name for the absence of division or the absence of otherness?
Connection.
Love.
Oh.
Love. Love is the... When you love someone, the distance between you collapses. That's what love is, the feeling that you and the other are one. So I suggest that the nature of consciousness or being is peace, happiness, and love with reference to the agitation, sorrow, and conflict that characterizes thoughts and feelings. And it's legitimate to do so whilst we are in this first step, when we are contrasting the content of experience with the awareness that we essentially are. However, go back to the analogy of space. If you were to ask the space, imagine space were conscious, imagine space could experience. And if you were to ask the experience, if you were to ask space to describe its experience of itself without reference to the content of experience. So the space is not looking at the people and saying, all the people are agitated, but I am peaceful. All the people are upset, but I am happy. That would be space describing itself with reference to the people inside it. But imagine space were to describe itself only referring to itself. What would it say of itself?
It has nothing to say.
Perfect, exactly. Well, it would actually say one thing about itself.
I am.
Perfect, exactly.
Listening.
Yeah, but that's why I suggest sometimes that the words I am are the only absolutely true statements. You're right. The statement I am peaceful, I consciousness am peaceful, is true relative to the agitation of our experience. But if we want to be really strict, the only true thing we can say about that which truly is infinite consciousness is I am. Now, just one small thing. Why did I not include compassion in that? Is that I would suggest that compassion isn't the nature of being. It is how being is expressed in the finite mind. But love is the nature of being. Compassion is its expression in everyday life. So there's just a little distinction there.
Thank you.
That's an excellent question, Sydney. I know exactly what you want to know. That's an excellent example. Thank you. Thank you for your first comment. I'm touched by what you say. You want to know what is the difference between the knowing with which the finite mind knows its experience and the knowing with which consciousness knows itself. That's an excellent question, and I know exactly what you want to know. Thank you. So the answer, Sydney, is it's like asking. I'm going to give you a few analogies. You choose whichever one resonates with you. What is the difference between the light with which the sun illuminates itself and the light with which the moon illuminates the earth at night? That's one analogy. Give you one more analogy. I might not be able to resist giving you two more analogies. But you know the analogy of the dreamer and the dreamed character. What is the difference between the knowing with which the dreamer knows their own mind and the dreamer and the knowing with which the dreamed character knows their experience? Third analogy, what is the difference between the knowing with which the actor John Smith knows himself as John Smith and the knowing with which the character King Lear knows his experience? And the answer is none.
I'm sorry, the answer
The answer is none.
none.
Tell me which of the three analogies resonate with you. Which do you like? And I'll elaborate.
I like them all. The one
Okay.
with the dreamer mind I hadn't heard before, so I think that one is
Okay.
I like the best.
So the dream character, she's on the Caribbean beach, and she knows her experience. Yes, she's experiencing the ice cream and the water and the sand. And with what knowing, with whose knowing does she know her experience? With the knowing that is the dreamer's mind. That it is in fact the dreamer who knows the experience of the Caribbean beach through the dreamed character, through the perceiving faculties of the dreamed character. But although the perceiving faculties are unique to the dreamed character, the knowing with which the dreamed character knows her experience is not located in her body or indeed anywhere in the time and space that seem to be real within the dream. The knowing belongs to the dreamer's mind. Yes? So now what is the knowing with which the dreamer knows their own mind? The same knowing. But in the case of the dreamer knowing their own mind, that knowledge is not mediated through the perceiving faculties of the dreamed character. The dreamer knows them, relatively speaking. The dreamer knows their own mind directly, or the dreamer knows the Caribbean beach indirectly, that is, via the perceiving faculties of the dreamed character. So, now let's take this now to your experience. What is the difference between the knowing with which you know yourself, the awareness of your own being, and the awareness with which you are now aware of my words. It's the same awareness. But the awareness that knows your own being directly without any intermediary step. Whereas your awareness of my words is mediated through your perceiving faculties. But it's the same awareness.
If it's the same awareness, I'm going to hit you with something now, Rupert. If it's the same awareness, how can it be said that the infinite does not know the finite?
Okay, the infinite does not know the finite directly. Okay. Sometimes, when I'm talking, I may, in the context of the conversation, I may say the infinite doesn't know the finite. But that's just the context of the particular conversation. That the full understanding is the infinite doesn't know the finite directly.
Yeah, because there's nothing to the finite but the infinite, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and if the infinite only knows itself, and if the finite is within the infinite, then it seems by definition that the infinite knows the finite. Or maybe, can we look at it this way? I was thinking of looking at it this way. I don't know if you like
using the mic, Sydney.
I don't know if you like the idea of levels, but can we say on the absolute level that the infinite knows the finite, but on the relative level that it cannot know the finite? Would you subscribe to something like that? As some kind of way of mind trying to resolve this in itself?
The infinite can only know finite experience through the agency of a finite mind. Of course, the finite mind is not something separate from the infinite. It is consciousness that it's itself that rises in the form of the finite mind. In the case of a human being, the form of thought and perception. So it is infinite consciousness itself that assumes the form of thought and perception. And through the faculty of thought and perception, it knows objective or finite experience. But in the absence of that finite mind, in the absence of any perceiving faculty, the infinite doesn't know anything.
Then why is it said that Brahman is the world, Nirvana is samsara?
Why is it said that Brahman is the world?
Why is it said, you know the saying, the world is an illusion, only Brahman is real, Brahman is the world.
Well, I explained that this morning. That's what the second meditation was about this morning.
I missed it, I'm sorry.
Okay. Listen to it, Sydney.
Okay.
You'll get the recording. And listen to it, because the whole meditation was an explanation of that quotation.
Okay, I'm somewhat satisfied, Rupert.
No, I don't. Somewhat satisfied is not good enough for me, Sydney. I like full satisfaction. But Brahman, infinite consciousness, knows nothing, but is everything.
It knows nothing but...
Brahman, infinite consciousness, knows nothing directly, but is everything.
But is everything.
What do I mean by that? In order to know anything, you must stand apart from that thing and know it in subject-object relationship. The only reason you can see me, relatively speaking, is because you stand apart from me and view me from a distance. The reason you can't see your own eyes is because your eyes cannot separate themselves from themselves in order to view them from a distance. So in order to know something, you have to separate yourself from that thing. In other words, all knowledge and experience take place in subject-object relationship. Indeed, subject-object relationship is the mechanism through which all knowledge and experience take place. In the absence of that relationship, there is no knowledge. Just like there is nothing seen when you try to look at your eyes. because there's no subject-object relationship. So the infinite by itself cannot separate itself from anything. Where would it go? It would just be more of itself. So the infinite consciousness by itself knows nothing. But in order to know something, it has to divide or seem to divide itself into a subject and an object. Just as in order to have a dream at night, your own mind has to seem to divide itself into the dreamed character and the dreamed world. It's only in that subject-object relationship, the dreamed character and the dreamed world, that you, the dreamer, are able to perceive the dreamed world. But the dreamer's mind is the totality of the dreamed world. Consciousness is the totality. What we call the world is an appearance of infinite consciousness. But consciousness cannot know that world directly. It is what we call the world. The world, or more accurately, the world is an appearance of infinite consciousness from a localized point of view. But in order to know that world, it must do so, it must localize itself as a finite mind. I can see you're still not fully satisfied.
Because, but that subject-object of knowing is also consciousness.
That's true.
So how can it be said that consciousness is not knowing in subject-object relationship?
Consciousness doesn't know anything directly. It knows objects through the subject-object relationship.
Yes.
It knows objects indirectly through the perceiving faculties of a finite mind. So the knowing with which you are now knowing this finite experience is infinite consciousness. But infinite consciousness can only know this experience through your finite mind. In the absence of your finite mind, infinite consciousness has no knowledge or experience.
Okay.
One more thing to say, Sydney, is that in the Vedantic teachings where you hear Brahman is the world or consciousness is everything, it's not true. There is no world for Brahman to be the totality of. There are no things for consciousness to be the all of. So a statement like Brahman is the world or consciousness is everything is a concession to the finite mind's belief that there is a world as such, or that there are things as such. So as a concession to that level of understanding, the teaching says, okay, there's a world. You think there's a world. Well, it's really Brahman. The world that is Brahman, or things are consciousness. But there are no things. There are only things, objects, from the point of view of a separate subject.
Okay, I'm getting it.
Okay, good.
My question is about the two thorns from this morning. I related to that. The second thorn is the witnessing. Do I understand that correctly? The thorn that removes the first thorn.
Yes, the first thorn is
the painful experience.
The painful suffering.
Yeah,
and
suffering.
Taking the stand of the witness position is the first thorn.
Taking the stand of the witness is the second thorn.
It's the second thorn, yes.
Yeah, right. And I'm very, very familiar with that.
Yes.
But I feel stuck there. And so
okay, well, this morning's meditations were an answer.
I have to re-listen to
an
it.
experiential answer to your to your question.
I feel like I get a glimpse sometimes.
But because the first thorn being lost in objective experience and the suffering that attends it. The second thorn, take a step back from the content of experience.
Right.
Whatever its content, and see that you are its knower. You are its witness. You are its observer. So here we're in subject-object relationship.
Right.
It's why it's called the path of discrimination. We discriminate what we are not,
right,
the content of experience, from what we are, the awareness that knows it.
Right.
But this is an artificial distinction because we're in duality here.
Right.
So in reality, there are not really two things. That's why this approach is called ad vita, or not two. There are not two things.
Okay.
Not only is there not mind and matter, but nor is there awareness plus the content of experience. Although it's a legitimate and necessary first step for one who is lost in the content of experience.
Right.
You're lost in your thoughts and feelings. Take a step back. You are aware of your thoughts and feelings.
Yes.
That's the first step, the first great recognition. The second great recognition, the recognition of the nature of the awareness that I am. Ever-present, unchanging, self-knowing,
Okay.
inherently peaceful, and so on. Then, when this separating yourself out from the content of experience has done its job of removing you and recognizing what you essentially are, you then have to go back to the content of experience and reconcile the two. What is the relationship? Now I've recognized the awareness that I am and its nature, but now you turn round again, having turned your attention away from the content of experience in order to focus on yourself and recognize yourself. You then have to finish the job. You have to go back and reinterpret your relationship with the objective content of experience in line with your new understanding of yourself. In other words, you have to collapse the apparent distance between the subject and an object, which was necessary for you to recognize your true nature. But once it's done its job, this division of experience into a subject and object then becomes a limitation.
Right. No, I'm with you, 100, because I realize I have had the next experience, because when I embrace the suffering, it transforms.
Yeah.
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 It feels like love.
That's it. The first path, which I sometimes refer to as the Vedantic path, by which I don't mean to imply by that the second step, that the last step, is not included in the Vedantic tradition. It is, right. But it's just not emphasized. Yeah. If you go to the classical texts of Advaita Vedanta, they're nearly all about separating yourself from the content of experience and knowing yourself as its witness. That they do make reference to this collapse,
right.
But it's not emphasized. This collapse of the distinction between the subject and object I refer to as a tantric approach. So the first approach is an approach of exclusion. You exclude the content of experience. You discriminate between yourself and the content of experience. What I sometimes refer to as a tantric approach is the path of inclusion, path of love. And again, I don't mean to imply by that the path of exclusion is not included in the tantric approach. It is. Yeah. And it's in fact the first step of the tantric approach. But it's just not emphasized. The tantric approach emphasizes the second step. The Vedantic approach emphasizes the first step. But both steps are included in both traditions.
Right. And is it fair to say that the second step feels very gentle? It feels very...
both steps can be very gentle.
Yeah. Okay. But this is really, really helpful.
Yes, you are experiencing agitated thoughts. Yeah. And instead of losing yourself in the turmoil of your thoughts, you just ask yourself the question, but what is it that is aware of my thoughts? Right. Oh, yes. I am aware of my thought. Yeah. That's very gentle. There's no violence there. There's no rejection of the thoughts. There's no denying of the thoughts. It's just a gentle step back. I am the one that knows my thoughts. I am not the thoughts.
I think what was hanging me up was it's grief that just knocks me down. And then when I can take that step back and then go toward it again, that feels so much more gentle than when the grief hit. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But thank you. That's really, really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
If consciousness doesn't change or is changeless, what is it that evolves? And if time is a concept of the mind, is there really any evolution?
From an absolute point of view, from the point of view of the absolute truth, no. But from the relative point of view of the mind, yes. From the relative point of view of the mind, there is change and therefore evolution. But if we want to be really just stay with the absolute truth, there is only knowing, knowing, only knowing. And there is no objective experience in that knowledge, because this knowing never really divides itself into a subject and object. It only seems to. So from that point of view, no, there's no evolution of knowing. But the evolution could only be the evolution of something objective. Only something objective, like a mind or a body or a world or a company only something objective could evolve. Strictly speaking, in the highest understanding, there is nothing objective. There's just infinite being, in which there's nothing to evolve. There's no evolution. No.